This is Tales from the Grid. Hosted by TPS students, we talk with people from all walks of life to better understand our now and realize our next. We're your hosts, Imogen,
Eli,
and Ayla.
Let's get started. We are here today with Kwabi Amoah-Forson, holder of an MBA, an entrepreneur, and founder of Peace Bus, along with Lawal, engineer, Snohomish County, discussing ways we can use educational experiences to spark passion and drive change in the communities that we live in. Kwabi, take us back in time. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And how'd you and Mo meet?
Back in time. Okay, I'm getting back and thinking about when I was a kid. Okay, I grew up in University Place, Washington. My mom was a psychologist, and my dad was an environmental engineer. And together they raised me and my brother, my older brother. His name's Kwasi. And growing up was interesting. I wouldn't say we grew up upper middle class, but we were pretty good, financially. And to live in a space where there's not a lot of black people was interesting. On my block, we were the only black family. Everyone else was white. Going to school, most people were white. And there was, spots here and there of people of color, but I'd say that overall, I was very fortunate with the education that I received. I did have to go through certain struggles and expectations of what people perceived me, of who I was, based off my skin color. But I didn't let that stop me, right? My mom and dad gave me a good understanding of who I was and who people look like me can be. So I knew about Malcolm X, I knew about Martin Luther King, I knew about Muhammad Ali, these figures who made great strides towards helping humanity. So I knew that when I got older, I could do it too.
That's good.
Yeah. And then you asked about how I met Mo?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's a cool story. So after high school, I went to Western Washington University for a couple of years, right? And I was doing the thing, going to college, doing the thing. And I got involved in reggae music, playing reggae music all the time. And I played so much reggae music, my grades went down, and I flunked out of Western. Yeah. So my parents were like, you got to come back home, right? You can't just be out in Bellingham just playing music. So I came back home. And in order to get my GPA back up, I had to be transferred to TCC for a transfer degree just to get my GPA back up. And that's where I met Mo. He was one of a myriad of different students there that really rallied around me. I rallied around them, and a friendship really blossomed from that. TCC was very unique. It was the most diverse student body of any school I've ever attended. And we really supported each other. The library was the place where everyone hung out. We were very loud, in the library, but it was the place to be, and just talking with each other and just being in space with each other and learning from each other. So, yeah.
Mo, did you grow up in Tacoma as well?
I did grow up in Tacoma partially. I grew up in Nigeria. I spent most of my childhood in Nigeria, actually, and my why I'm an engineer today, or a civil engineer rather, is in Nigeria, actually, a lot of our infrastructure is still developing. And so every morning, we would go to school and the roads were a little bumpy and things were a little unsafe. The infrastructure was a little lacking. And, that's kind of what sparked my why. And I'm like, you know what, this is not safe. We want to make it safer for people so people can get to where they need to go and go back home safely. So that kind of sparked my why. And so that's where I grew up. And then I moved to the UK for a little while. Then I moved back to Nigeria. And then I came here, I think at maybe 18, 19 at the time. And, I carried that reasoning with me. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to give back. That's my why. And there's so many ways to give back, actually. This just made the most sense for me because it resonated heavily in my commute every day. What I saw, what I felt, I'm like, this is what we need. We need basic infrastructure for people. And, that's important. So fast forward, I'm in the library with Kwabi, my brother, and our whole group of friends, really a very diverse group of people.
Yeah.
And the library was supposed to be the library, but it was a little noisy. And we played a little part in that. But it was always, it built a lot of diversity and a lot of community, which was a beautiful thing.
That part, community, yeah.
Kwabi, after TCC, you ended up going to school to get your Master of Business Administration, and it was during that time you decided you didn't want to go the traditional route with your career. Tell us what inspired you to rethink what you wanted to do with your MBA.
Yeah, it was a couple of different things. So I went to City University of Seattle for my MBA, and while I was there, I was feeling unfulfilled. I didn't know why I was there. I was going through the motions. I kind of felt like a zombie. I was doing the work, going to class, go home, rest, and I'd go back to school. And I didn't really know why I was doing all these things, I just knew that I wanted to get a master's degree because my parents had either a master's or higher. And while I was doing that, I had this epiphany, maybe. Typically, when there's something going on with a student or a young person, they go to their family or they go to their friends for guidance. But for some odd reason, I was like, nah, I'm not going to go to them. I'm having some sort of inner conflict. I'm going to go to someone in the community and see what they have to say. Someone who's separated from me enough where maybe they could see my potentiality where other people who were closer to me couldn't see it. So I reached out to an old academic advisor of mine named Dr. Peter Baccio from the Evergreen State College Tacoma campus, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. He's actually still teaching. He's in his 90s. Yeah, awesome guy. He's a world-renowned novelist as well. So I reached out to Dr. Baccio and I'm like, hey, I'm struggling. Can I come talk to you at your office? And he says, sure, Kwabi, come talk. And so I go to his office, I sit down, and I'm telling him all my woes. Like I'm in college, I don't know why I'm there, and things are kind of difficult because I'm lacking a sense of purpose. And he says, Kwabi, shut up. And I was like, wait, what is happening? Like, why are you telling me to shut up? He's like, you're complaining too much. You're complaining too much. He says you need to stop and ask yourself this one simple question. Ask yourself, who do you want to be? And not what do you want to be? He said you could be a lawyer, you could be a doctor, you could be an actor, you could be whatever. Don't think about that yet. You're too young. Don't think about that yet. Think about the principles you want to embody as a human being first. Once you figure that out, everything will follow after. And that was the initial beginning of the whole humanitarianism and the whole peace aspect of my life.
So Kwabi, I figured out my why was, from a young age. And actually, I feel like that's a privilege to be able to know your why from a young age. Because,
right.
I feel like a lot of times, the societal pressure, you need to know what you're trying to do at a young age and you commit to that. That's a big commitment. And we don't know the gravity of that kind of commitment at a young age. And so you push through that. You make a commitment and you go with it through and through. And sometimes it works out. A lot of times it works out. It worked out for me. And I figured out my why at a young age. So what was your why?
Well, my why was simply to bask in my identity. So the idea was, who am I? Well, I love, out of anything in the entire world, seeing different people from different walks of life, races, colors, and creeds coming together for something positive. That's the reason why I became a humanitarian. Why do you feel the need to help other people in need? Where did that come from? You said you learned from an early age what you wanted to be. What sparked that?
Great question. It was very interesting because to a certain extent, I was kind of pushed. There was a lot of nudges to go in a certain direction in terms of engineering and science. Yeah. So that nudge was already there.
Who pushed you?
Great question. In Nigeria, that's just kind of how it is.
Same with Ghana.
We're kind of just you're going to be an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor. A lot of times, we're still in that transitionary phase where there's more to it than, these three aspects. There's so much more, again, but, you're kind of limited in terms of opportunity because of the fact that, yes, this is a developing country. They don't have access to a lot of resources, and we're getting there.
Right.
So that was kind of the push. Those were the nudges, the society, the schools, the people, the parents as well. Yeah. That was kind of the push.
So if you're growing up and you're like, Dad, Mom, I want to be an artist, they're gonna be like, what are you talking about, son? Get in line.
That's such a good question because actually, right now it's very interesting. I'll give you a little backstory into I used to work at a previous place where the idea was you're going to do what you like to do, but the goal is to make profit. That's kind of the overarching goal. And I'm like, that doesn't coincide with my values. So how can I serve the world? Because I see myself as someone who can serve the world. That's what I want to do. And in this space that I'm in now, I'm doing that and I'm fulfilling that. But then I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to do more. What more can I do? Because we get that, I'm getting those intrinsic values that, okay, yes, this feels good, but what more can I do? There's always little areas for improvement. And, that kind of sparked my thirst and drive for, giving back on a more holistic scale and connecting to human beings and humanity. And, it's still growing. I'm still learning. And it's such a beautiful, and I'll share a little story later on, but it was such a beautiful epiphany for me. Like, you know what, this is what I think I want to do. So right now I'm an engineer. 4 or 5 years from now, that could change. And that's okay. That's okay.
So Mo talked about how he felt there was more to life. You eventually founded the Peace Bus. Tell us about that.
Yeah, being the founder of the Peace Bus, yeah. Well, the whole journey starts 2 years even before that. Basically, in 2017, I had this feeling I wanted to promote peace. More so, discover what peace meant to people. So I created 2 posters. One said, "Love, peace, and justice for all." The other one said, "War is not the answer, say no to violence." And I'd go out to Wright Park on Saturday mornings, and I would just post up. I'd have my table, I'd have the radio blaring some classical music, adding to the ambiance of the place. And people would come up to me and they'd say, "Well, what are you selling?" And I'm like, "I'm not selling anything. I just want to have a conversation with you about the most important thing of peace." So eventually people were like, "Okay, that's interesting. Is this religious?" And I was like, "It could be. I don't know. I mean, it depends on what you perceive peace to be." And so sooner or later, people kind of got the idea, like Saturday mornings, there's this black kid at the park. He'll talk to you about peace. And people would bring their loved ones and their family and their friends. And then one Saturday, someone who was severely mentally ill attacked me. They ran up on me and tried to fight me, but I'm a black belt in Taekwondo, so I dodged all the punches. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But they ran off, right? They ran off. And the next Saturday, I go back out, and I'm thinking maybe this guy's going to come up the cuts. I'm sort of paranoid. But what I did was, instead of staying in one spot, I started traveling around the park, talking to people about peace with my posters. And then the next Saturday, I went to Seattle, and then I went to Portland, and then I went to Vancouver, BC, and then I went to San Francisco. And then I had a friend who was stationed in the Netherlands. He told me to come to the Netherlands and talk to people and ask the question of what peace meant to them. That was my beginning. And then when I came back home, I thought, well, what's the next stage, right? If I'm going to be asking people about what peace means, how can I bump it up one more notch? And that's when I thought of this idea of using a vehicle for peace. And at first, the idea was to fly for peace. This idea of becoming a pilot and flying for peace in that way. But I was in grad school, and as we all know, when you're in grad school, you have no money. So I was poor. So I was like, well, I can't afford to pay for lessons. I took like 3 lessons. And so I thought, well, my income tax is coming. My money's coming for my income tax. I'll buy a vehicle. And that's how the Peace Bus was born. And a little bit about this before we move forward. The Peace Bus was never meant to do humanitarian aid. The idea was just to have a bus and people would see it on the street and they'd think maybe do more peaceful stuff or, help people. But I realized in the bus, there's a spot where there's supposed to be seats and there's absolutely nothing, just wood. So I thought, why not utilize this space to do local humanitarian aid? And that's when I started helping people.
Wow. Is that same kind of thing what helped you create the All Youth Can Eat campaign?
Yes, it is. Great question. It is. So I've done various campaigns over the years, all the way from driving down to the border of Mexico to interview Border Patrol agents about the crisis, all the way to traveling across the U.S., giving out hundreds of books to people in need. But I also created this campaign called All Youth Can Eat. Yes, it's one of my favorite campaigns of all time because it addresses one of the biggest ills and strains in our nation, and that is hunger. Right now in Washington State, 1 in 6 children experience hunger right now. They're kids with an empty belly. And in a nation that's so plentiful, how come our bellies aren't full? Right? Yeah. So it's time for us to transition from a society of eating to a society of feeding. And that's where the All Youth Can Eat campaign comes into play. It's basically from July 1st to September 1st here in Tacoma and Seattle. There's restaurants on every single day of the week so that youth can eat for free. Right? And hopefully this summer, 2025, this summer, we'll extend the program to Chicago and Toledo, Ohio.
That's really cool.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like they don't need a ticket, they don't need a token to get the meal. They just show up. And so when you go to the restaurants participating, you can't tell the kids from the kids, the ones who need it from the ones who don't. They're just all eating together how it should be.
Yeah. Mo, you and Kwabi have obviously known each other for a while. Is humanitarian work something that sparks a passion in you as well?
Definitely. This goes back to my why. That's what always grounds me. Whenever I'm confused, worried, I'm not grounded. I'm like, what is the reason? What's my why? And that kind of grounds me. However, there's multiple ways to fulfill my why. It doesn't have to, I'm not bottlenecked into my career and my profession. There's so many ways to give back. There's so many ways. And, when I think about, when I was sitting up at work one day and I was just like, this is fulfilling. This is great, but I wanted to connect. I needed to connect to people. I think like where we are now, there's a lot of disconnection. We're not connected. We need to be connected. We need to be connected to each other and to what drives us. It makes life easier and it makes our communities thrive. So trying to give back in that way. And I was like, okay, what way can I give back? What way can I give back? And I messaged Kwabi right out of the blue. I was like, Kwabi, I forget. We have Kwabi and I talk a lot now. We've reconnected, which again, we need to connect more as human beings because it's opened up so much opportunity. It's opened up a lot of opportunity actually. And again, I'm gonna just say this. My degree it opened a lot of doors, but also in that same aspect, you get a privilege to do so many other things, but getting that degree gives you that opportunity, to do that. So sometimes, is it needed? Possibly. It could give you a lot more opportunity. So that gave me the opportunity to get to where I was and realize, what? I need to do more. How can I do more? So I reached out to Kwabi, and I don't remember our text chain, but I was like, Kwabi, like I would really like to, give back. I feel like, I'm really distracted. I'm not really seeing the bigger picture. And a lot of times that tends to happen. At least it happened with me. It's like I had like a rude awakening in a way. And I was like, oh, I'm awake now. I'm up. It's 6 a.m. I'm awake. And it's interesting. Some people, wake up at 18, some at 30, some don't. And I'm like, I'm fortunate that I was able to have that experience and be like, yes, okay, Kwabi, let's go. Yeah. Let's give back. And I think we did we gave back to some shelters.
Yeah. So at the time of Mo's awakening, I was in the midst of a campaign called Peace Stockings that happened this holiday season, where basically we were trying to ensure that every person here in Tacoma had warm socks for Christmas. And so after Christmas, I delivered maybe like 4,700 socks, right, to people on the street. And then it sort of bled over after Christmas. And so when Mo hit me up, I was like, hey, I still got 100 pairs of socks left. We should just give the rest out. And so he came down, we teamed up, we went around Tacoma and just basically went to a lot of different shelters giving out socks, people in need. It was cool.
And it was interesting because I had a conversation with a gentleman at a shelter. When we just connected, I didn't see myself as an engineer. I saw him like, we are both equal. We both have souls. We're like, we're just both people connecting. And that interaction led me to partner up with Northwest Package up in Seattle, actually. And essentially this organization puts together supplies for the homeless. And not just supplies, but and also not just the homeless, but also folks who are drug users. There's different sectors. Yeah. So I had this remarkable story when I was delivering these supplies to a certain area in Seattle. There was this one gentleman. He was just at a local bus stop, and whenever I'm giving out these packages, they always say you need to have a buddy. You need to have a buddy. I'm like, it's always hard to get someone to go with you. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go do it by myself because this is what needs to happen. It doesn't need to happen when it's convenient for me. That's the beauty of giving back. It's like these people need it. They need it now, and it needs to happen because it's cold outside.
It is cold.
So the supplies, it has socks, gloves, hats, all these different things. So I met this gentleman, and I was like, hey, would you like a supply pack? He's like, oh yeah, of course. And then I give him the supply pack, and he asks me a question like, oh, we just connected over something in my childhood. We started talking about MTV and Pimp My Ride and Exhibit. And I'm like, whoa, this dude, that was the best. I was there for like 15 minutes at this random bus stop, busy intersection. And, you know, people were like looking like, who are these? The looks I was getting, I was like feeling like people were looking and like, they were like, look at this homeless person, look at this other person. And they were like comparing us. And I was feeling like a little uncomfortable at the way people were looking at us, because I'm like, we're both human beings, we're both souls. Let's look at each other as people and nothing else. So he had this, he gave me, when I gave him the supply, we started talking for 15 minutes and he's like, hey, I have something, maybe you can give it to someone else in need. And that was another thing for me. I'm like, I almost teared up, actually. I'm like, This is the work that needs to be done. You know, that act of giving made him want to give. He didn't have a lot. Yeah. He didn't have a lot. He was homeless, you know, and he gave this little Hot Wheels toy car still in the packet. And he was like, oh, maybe you could give it to a kid. Maybe you could give it to someone that needs it. And I didn't give it to anybody yet, but I feel like that's a memento for me to remind me of my why. I probably will give it to a kid at some point.
It's coming.
Because I feel bad. I'm like, this is for someone else, not me. So, you know, every morning I look at it and I'm like, yes, this is why I'm doing this work. This is what's important. This needs to happen. And that's why I keep telling myself that, you know, right now I'm an engineer. 5 years from now, I feel like my hunger to give back will only grow. Because I'm actively revisiting this idea, like this needs to keep going. How can I, you know, keep giving back? And sometimes I even give people an opportunity. So the same way Kwabi gave me that opportunity to deliver, you know, socks to people, that sparked something in me. And now I'm looking for people who want to do this run with me and give supplies, because that might spark something for them. And it's just this chain reaction. And at some point, we'll all be giving back, and it'll all be a happy little community. And we'll all be. That's my outlook on life. That's what I think will happen at some point. But you know, anyways.
The people who have the least are often the ones who will give the most, right? A story that happened similarly with me that Mo was talking about. So just a couple weeks ago, I'm in my bus. I'm driving around. I have maybe just a few socks left. And I'm driving around. It's late at night. And a homeless man, he runs up to me. You know, he sees the bus. He recognizes it. He's like, hey, stop. And so I hit the brakes. You know, I roll down the window. I'm like, hey, what's going on, man? He was like, yeah. He's out of breath. He's like, yeah, man, you got some of those socks? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I got a few left. And so I reach back, I get a couple of pairs, and I hand it to him. And as I hand him the socks, he hands me $3. And I'm like, no, I don't need anything, sir. It's all good. And he's like, no. I want to help. And my first instinct was to be like, I don't need $3. It's all good. But I could see that he was sincere. He says, you know, here's my last $3. And I know that you help people. I know you. He's like, you knew me. He's like, I know you help people. I know that $3 are going to help someone who's in need. And so I took his money. I took the $3, knowing that it was humanizing him, knowing that he wanted to give back. I gave him the opportunity to give back. And hopefully, like Mo says, that this will create this chain effect of helping people. And hopefully we can create a tighter and more profound and strong community through actions like these.
Yeah. You talked about the Peace Bus and how you want to try to eradicate hunger for kids in Tacoma and Seattle and eventually nationwide, and how networking with industry and community partners helps your mission to create meaningful change in our communities. What's next?
Well, what's next is it won't just be the youth. We're going to feed everybody. I don't see why the U.S. can't be a place where people just eat for free, unless they take me out before that happens, you know? If you didn't need food to live, it'd be a different story. But you need, last time I checked, you don't eat for a couple weeks, you're dead, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense that everyone should have food to eat. And I think that's some sort of, it's an action that should be happening outside of government, right? Yeah. That we can mobilize people, everyday people, to feed ourselves, right? So that's what's next. And then also the peace plane, that's coming up, So as you know, I have a peace bus, right? But The idea of taking peace to the highest height ever in the sky, using aviation as a way of raising awareness of the major inhibitors of peace. What are the things preventing us from creating a more peaceful society, being poverty, racism, and lack of quality education for our youth? If we can raise awareness of these ills, I think the world will be in a much better place, a more peaceful place, a place where everyone has a seat at the table of opportunity.
And then you could take peace global.
Taking it global. We're taking it universally. It's a universe now, you know? Yeah.
And Mo, what is next for you?
Of course. Well, actually, I've been looking to get into immigration law. Legal attorneys there's a lot of backlog, a lot of work. A lot of legal attorneys are understaffed. So one of the things that I've been trying to do is to get into that space and offer my assistance whichever way I can. And this is one of the things where, your degree gets you this opportunity. I don't exactly have a legal background, but I have technical expertise with technical documents. So I have that in, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this as leverage to break this barrier to entry and expose that to other people. Like, hey, just because you don't have this, degree doesn't mean there isn't a way to enter. You just have to find a way. There's always a way. You just have to find it. There's always a possibility. And that's the beautiful thing about, if you really, truly want to achieve something, if you want to go for something and you believe that's a passion, you're going to find a way to achieve it. And, I look at these opportunities, this is a great opportunity for me to grow in this space and share that with other people. So if this kind of scenario happens again, I'm like, okay, I have this resource, I can share this resource, and we can all just, achieve this together. So that's what's probably next. I want to get into the legal space with my expertise and try to give back in that front.
Mo, Kwabi, is there anything else you'd like to add or say to us and our listeners?
Sure. And I'm just thinking about this. A lot of times, actually, the way our society or the way things are set up, right? You need a traditional degree to, pursue your dreams. And I don't like that idea a lot of times, although speaking from experience, I do have a degree. And I think, a lot of times you don't necessarily need a degree to pursue your dreams, right? Mm-hmm. So what alternatives do you have? How can you, prevent going into debt? How can you prevent wasting time and realizing, I don't like this because of, you might not like one or two classes, like whatever the case may be. I fell into a couple of those situations. And I think the dichotomy between, okay, what can I do to achieve my dream versus how can I avoid, going into debt is very important. Like it's a lot of the things that students are facing. I faced it too. So there are options. You have options out there. A lot of times there are apprenticeship programs where you go straight into it and you learn straight on, hands-on, physically doing what the requirements are for what a traditional degree would encompass. And you can decide then and there, like, okay, I like this, I'm going to do this forever, or I don't like this. And that way it also saves you time and money, and you can pivot. You can immediately pivot and do something else. There's also technical colleges which require less time and less money, and you don't fall into this stigma of, okay, I had to get a traditional degree to achieve what I needed to achieve. You don't. There's options. I think one of the things that I'm trying to do actually back home in Nigeria, which this is a very long-term goal actually, is to pretty much give people the experience. It's under this umbrella of a school, but the idea is to give people hands-on experience so they can start creating funds, creating resources to give back, create those roads that are lacking. You don't have to get this traditional degree to do that. That's one of my overarching goals. It's far in the future. It's still in the works. There's still a whole plan going ahead, but that's one of the things that I would love to do. And I would love to actually bridge that gap and bring that idea here. Actually, there are people doing that. It's not recognized as much because, I feel like one of the barriers to entry into a lot of jobs here are you need a degree before you need to get in. And I don't believe in that. I actually don't believe in that. Sometimes I feel like a lot of the most skilled people are the ones without degrees because they think outside the box. They're not in a classroom. I mean, this question has taken me back to my days in school where I'm in a classroom, maybe not 365 days a year, but a significant amount of time. And I'm just like, it's hard to learn in that environment. You need to be more hands-on. You need to, when you become really you're able to really think outside the box. And I think that's important. And the only way to think outside the box is to be outside the box.
Mo brought the practical. I think it's important to have the practical, and I'm going to bring the philosophical angle. Okay, so I think it's very important that every young person who is passionate about something pursue it with the utmost rigor, because there are individuals that will be in your life that will tell you can't do it, and you cannot listen to those people. We need every person on earth to be pursuing their passions and to be the best that they can be, so our earth can be as beautiful as it needs to be, as it should be. I think about a story of my own story when I was younger, when I was in 9th grade, right? And at the time at Curtis Junior High School, there was a time where everyone had to go to the office and register for a sport, right? You go to the office, you register for a sport. And so everyone's rushing to the office, you got to sign up for spring sports. And I remember holding the sheet for baseball in my hand, and someone came up to me and said, "You're black, you guys don't play baseball," and took the sheet from me. And literally that instant, I was like, okay, maybe I don't play baseball. Who knows? I could have been playing for the Cubs, I say that to say that, stay true to yourself. Stay true to yourself and pursue your passions. We all need you to be your best. And in order for us to reach our highest potentiality as a world, we need you. Yeah.
Kwabi, Mo, thank you for carving out some time to hang out with us today. And remember, your future is not found, it's forged. Keep pushing, keep growing, and keep defining your destiny. Until next time.